First, from Formosa Features, we have the Emmy-winning supervising sound editor from Game of Thrones, whose talent has enlivened fan favorites like the Fast and the Furious series, Star Trek Beyond, and Paranormal Activity. Please welcome Peter Brown.
Yeah.
That was like magic. I didn't even see him come through. Next, we have the Senior Vice President at Formosa Interactive, whose work you might recognize in some of your favorite video games, such as Uncharted Lost Legacy and Halo Wars 2. Please welcome Paul Lipson. Next, we've got the CEO and Chief Creative Officer of Bleeding Fingers Music, the company behind the music for The Simpsons this season. He also produced the celebrated score for BBC's Blue Planet 2. Welcome, Russell Emanuel. Next, he is an innovator in the world of virtual reality and immersive media, most recently filming the Emmy Award-winning piece, NBA Follow My Lead. He is also the director of photography on Netflix's The Ritual. Please welcome Andrew Schulkind. Next, we have a multi-talented art director who designs futuristic sets and sci-fi worlds on films like Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy, Jordan Crockett. Next, as a two-time Academy Award-nominated VFX supervisor at Scanline VFX, he is responsible for effects on box office blockbusters like Captain America Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, and Black Panther, Brian Grill. Finally, we have the supervising director of your favorite animated dark comedy, BoJack Horseman, and the upcoming animated series, Tuca and Birdie, Mike Hollingsworth. Nice. I like the high five. Thanks, man. Last, now for our moderator, you might recognize him from Cinema Blend interviews with Hollywood's biggest stars. Please welcome Connor Schwarfigger. Did I say that right? Oh my goodness. High five.
Connor, if you're going to pursue a career in show business, you've got to do something about that last name.
It's
Schwarfigger?
Schwartfigger, folks. Just
Schwarfigger?
There you go, Schwartfigger.
Schwarfigger.
All right, so now that we got that out of the way, thank you so much, Jana. And it's wonderful to be up here today with all of our awesome panelists. They've all played such huge roles in, the creation of, the audio and visual elements of so many projects that we love. And today we're going to have kind of an in-depth conversation about just what goes into putting these projects together, because they all involve animation, CG, or visual effects in some way. So let's get started. Are you guys ready? Yeah. All right, yeah. So kicking things off, I want to start by asking all of our panelists to kind of point out a moment from that reel and just talk about a favorite moment from working on any of those projects that we just saw. And Brian, let's start with you.
Well, just finished up Black Panther, and one of the it's a pretty awesome experience, and it's great to see that everybody likes it as well. But showing up on set, what we worked on mostly was the Warrior Falls, where T'Challa would do his battles with M'Baku and Killmonger. Just showing up on set, and they built this huge set, and the whole set was up on a 6-foot riser, and all underneath was the water, which then was heated and then pumped up, and then you get your waterfall, and then the water rushing into the pool. So, we can do and expound on that, but just seeing something that practical and being, immersed with the water and having to wear boots and walk in the pond just like the actors, makes all the difference. So that was my highlight of the Black Panther.
All right, who wants to go next? Mike, how about you?
Did you initially skip me because I made fun of your last name?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a moment, but now you can go now.
Out of that clip, I think my favorite part would have to be Bradley Hitler Smith.
Same.
That wasn't in the script. One of our directors, Aaron Long, just turned that in, and we were tasked with making up the names of these characters who would become, who we would live with for 5 seasons, and you just make little decisions in the first season, like giving a character the middle name Hitler, and it just sticks.
Who else? Anybody else got a favorite?
I'll go next. Hey everyone. I think my highlight on Doctor Strange there with Hong Kong. It was a really massive set, and logistics of it and time, budgets, other creative departments involved to make the final product. To see that all come together, to see it on screen, to see it here today, you know, that's a nice highlight, you know, that I can, if I think about it now, you know, but, you know, getting it done is a massive highlight, you know, when it's finished and the crew turn up and you're like, you know, here it is, and you hand it over, but, you know, it was a year in the making just on that set for research, construction, you know, designs, you know, all the departments involved. So yeah, you know, it's a very basic thing, but yeah, sometimes it's just such a relief to see it finished and on the screen, you know, and you're presenting it, and not always the way that you want from the very beginning, the first week when you're on. But yeah, to see it out there and people enjoying it and a sense of relief and, you know, and pride, it's a good thing.
Okay, let's keep going down the line.
Sorry. Little stretch. On the ritual, a moment that came to mind, just thinking about kind of happy accidents and seeing something come together and kind of finding something in the moment. You do it long enough and you start to look for these exceptions, kind of ways that you can do things differently. And there was a shot we were doing where we're shooting we built this whole village in Romania, 8,000 feet up in the mountains, in Carpathians. And at one point there was a super bright moon, falling the light around with my meter and thinking, this is kind of crazy, how can I use this? And we were shooting this dark movie with really sensitive sensors and really fast lenses. And so I thought, it'd be really crazy. We're about to burn down this building. Why don't we cut a hole in the roof and light with the moon? And we did. It was kind of a fun, kind of amazing moment.
Wait, I've got to follow the guy that built a city in Romania.
I know.
But
Give it a shot.
I don't think that's very fair. Yeah, in music, not so, you know, such an exciting scenario. But first of all, doing Treehouse of Horror, I mean, that's a highlight in itself. Such a great tradition around those episodes. And I think two things that stand out about that for me is Matt Groening has a love for live theremin, which I didn't know about when we started to do the this season, and we had a live theremin session. For those not sure if everybody knows what that is, but it's that weird instrument that you wave your hands in front of, and it goes woo, and it's extremely difficult to play and play in tune and accurately. But there's one player in Los Angeles, Lara Wicks, who's just an incredible musician. She brings in a live theremin and just nails it, and that was a fantastic highlight in that session. And also having to come up with your Halloween name at the end of the episode. I don't know if you know, there's a tradition. I think I was Rusty Evil Hell for that one.
All right, we got any video game fans out there? All right. Well, you know, we do all the audio for a lot of your favorite games. So, I mean, on that reel, any Uncharted fans out there? It's great to work with some of our partners at Sony. We actually just wrapped God of War, which will be coming out, so please check that out soon. But I mean, on those clips, there's two things that really stood out. One, you know, doing a massive score for Halo here in town at Fox with some of my friends. I mean, it's just such a thrill. Over 100 players. We did a full choir at Skywalker. Just a gorgeous recording for Halo. It's such a big tradition for music. And you saw the clip there from Legend of Zelda. Any Zelda fans out there? Yeah, so it's wonderful to bring Zelda's voice to life. We were the team that actually recorded her voice, and I think for the first time in English. So that was a huge thrill for us to just hear Zelda speak. So yeah, pretty cool.
All right, I'll give you a little piece of trivia about Star Trek. I've been lucky enough to work with really, really great folks, which is probably the best part about the business. And on Star Trek, work in post-production, there's a lot of long hours. And so to alleviate that a little bit in the picture department, there was a foosball table there. Now, Justin Lin got really into playing foosball with everybody. He was our director. And the thing was, the games would go on and on because the film went on for many, many months. Well, it eventually turned into sort of a round-robin tournament. And Justin was pretty close to being the best one there. But he finally said, okay, here's the prize for the winner of the tournament we'll put you on a poster somewhere in Yorktown in the floating space station in Star Trek. So if you go into the film, you will see assistant editor Dave Corey's face on a poster somewhere in Yorktown towards the end of the film after Spock is looking at some pictures. If you look there, it was just kind of a wonderful treat that Justin did for the crew, and is a little example of how great a great person is to work for, because he cares about all the folks who are working for him and gives them little fun visual effects moments like that. You'll also actually see a lot of the rest of the editor crew as dead members of the Federation. Their names will come up when pictures of them come by. So that was one of my favorite moments.
All right, guys. And now that we've gotten kind of a chance to get to know you guys, Brian, we have to talk about Black Panther. It's about a technologically advanced country hidden away in the heart of Africa. But I want to ask you, what's your approach to creating sort of this never-before-seen place that sort of balances a grounded sense of realism with a sense of fantasy?
Well, again, Wakanda was beautiful, and the way the guys at ILM, they did that whole sequence of building the city, and we were mostly responsible for the waterfall area, Wakanda Falls. But Ryan, the director, he wanted to somehow take this this kind of traditional coronation, but also show that there was some sort of technological advance. So originally in the script, in order to shut the waterfall off so it would expose the arena where they would actually fight, was a bunch of the Royal Guard would go up and put their shields and block the waterfall. And then during the filming, they decided, you know what, that's not quite right, because Wakanda has this, they're technically advanced. So we went back and forth and did some concepts and literally came up with a scenario where these big, we called them plungers, so to speak, and that just basically started whirlpools that started sucking the water out, which was a huge engineering type of situation that not too many countries would be able to do. So here you have them in their garb and their ceremonial barges going up to this waterfall, and then you have these cool water whirlpools sucking the water and then exposing the arena below. So I thought that was a nice little way of bringing technology and tradition together. So to me, that was one of those nice kind of bridges. And then one of the other things, Jeffrey Bauman, who is the overall visual effects supervisor on the movie, he worked very closely with the technology of what what we call the Royal Talon, was the aircraft that they would fly around, and it was based off of sound waves. So if you've ever seen online, there's this cymatics videos that they have where sound and vibration will show you different patterns. So we kind of took that cymatic kind of approach. So when the ship was over the water, you didn't see like you would normally see like a helicopter, with all this air pushing, and it was just the water changing shape, and much like the cymatic sound, because they were sound engines. So I thought that was kind of a cool way of not saying that these just magically flow, but there was some sort of technology attached to it.
All right, and Russell, Bleeding Fingers Music works on a variety of projects. So what I want to ask you is, how do you approach the score for something grounded in reality, like the nature documentary Blue Planet 2, versus something animated like The Simpsons?
I have no idea. Obviously, very different. I mean, for those of you who've seen Blue Planet or On Planet Earth 2, really for us, the lead instrument is Sir David Attenborough's voice. And, he's a national treasure. So our job, and then you've got these incredible pictures of animals and landscapes that have taken 5 to 7 years to film. So our job is really to help tell the story, but really stay out of the way somewhat. Make it beautiful and epic, but allow those elements to breathe. The Simpsons, on the other hand, you're in the moment, you're punctuating the picture, you're helping tell the jokes. It really is a very different process, and by the way, probably the biggest difference is you've got a week from spotting to orchestral record, whereas Planet Earth, you've got more like a year.
Kind of a difference, yeah. So, Paul, you're an advocate for audio advancement in the gaming industry, having served as the president of the Game Audio Network Guild. Could you tell us a bit more about your background and your current role with Formosa Interactive?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been in games for 20 years, which is great because a lot of you weren't born. So I have a little bit of history. I've been doing this professionally really since '98. But going backwards, I'm now the senior vice president of Formosa Interactive, which is the interactive division of Formosa Group. Thank you. I was at Xbox for almost 5 years, so I was working a lot of the first-party titles at Microsoft. And before that, I was COO and audio director of Pyramind Studios in San Francisco. And so throughout my career, I've been able to drive audio technology and audio advancement in a lot of different ways. I mean, when I was at Microsoft, I patented a precognitive interactive music system. There's some white coat stuff for you there. But when you're dealing with games, and I think this is interesting with the panelists up here, games is an interactive experience as opposed to something that's linear. And there's a lot of different tech and different processes that go into games. Games, I don't know about you, but for me, I'll spend 40, 50, 60, in case of Skyrim, maybe 100 hours playing a game, And so it's not like, well, you watch a movie and you laugh, you cry, and your beginning, middle, and end. A game might have a couple beginnings, 9,000 middles, and a few ends. And it's, these experiences are long. And nowadays, if you're playing games, there's seasons, entire just annual events in the world. So the amount of content, amount of audio that has to happen is expansive. So for most of my career, again, my background is in music. I did my undergrad and my master's degree at the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. So I've got some creative roots, but I've spent the past 12 years as an audio director and driving teams. So.
And Mr.
Enough
Mike,
about me.
Mr. Mike Hollingsworth, BoJack.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There we go. BoJack Horseman is a very unique show. Obviously, that's putting it mildly. But could you tell us a little bit about your role in that and how you're involved in sort of developing its visual identity?
I'm the supervising director of the show, the director of directors. And on our particular show, I oversee the whole process, all these storyboards and animation. It's really so great getting your hands in and getting so messy. Ours is a 2D process, except for Russell, who's working on The Simpsons, which I have to give him some respect to Russell down there. He's working on The Simpsons and Planet Earth, two of the longest running shows, the Earth being pretty old, and also The Simpsons. But yeah, and then I work with the creator. I sit in the editorial process and really just bang out as many jokes and gags I'm kind of the other side of the coin from our creator, Raphael, who's making all this real bummer stuff in BoJack. Everybody keeps overdosing and stuff. Yeah. And then I bring in my funny little animal gags.
Just balance it
I'm
out.
like, turtles are slow. And he's like, but that turtle just died of a heroin overdose. Or maybe he's extra slow because he's on heroin. Yeah, so.
You have an odd job, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, then. Shifting gears to Mr. Jordan Crockett. You've worked on massive projects like Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Strange. So how does the art department divide responsibilities for set and visual design with such a large team? And is there a particular specialty that you're known for?
I make really good cups of tea.
Always good.
Start when you're first starting out, Yeah, I mean, how it gets divided up, there is a specialty that, it's also to do with personality and things, how you can handle projects and depending on how long they are, how big they are. But yeah, how it gets divided up is that if you're working for an HOD or a designer, if you've been working for a long time, they know your techniques and to suit them, because the biggest part of all of our jobs up here is collaboration, and pushing out a final product, with that initial vision. So how it's divided is obviously could be lack of time, it could be lack of labour. So but once you're on, you're established as your skills or your portfolio, and then there's someone else that decides where you go, and then you have to be like water and find yourself there. It starts out by sheer panic, because you might only have 3 references, or you might have 1,000. And then as time goes on, it moves. More people have ideas, and you just collaborate, constant collaboration. And I think that's probably one of the strengths that I have. You you sometimes have to shut up and listen, and sometimes there's times to speak up when you believe in a design, especially when you've nurtured it. So I believe in myself. That's kind of like I'll be given a product reference, and I'll let my mind go and do some design, and then hopefully it's part of the recipe of what we're serving up. And when it happens like that, and it more often than not it does. But it's good for, that's what I would say is the biggest factor in our jobs, is collaborating. If you don't, you're toast, and I've enjoyed it. So, and that's the other thing, enjoying it and making sure you don't lose focus.
Absolutely. And Andrew, I wanted to ask you, you have numerous projects in the virtual reality realm, and can you tell us a bit more about some technological advancements that are going on in that world, and how that's impacting your approach to current projects?
Yeah, sure. It's a funny thing, because coming up as a cinematographer, shooting traditional projects was a really kind of a standard path, and now I'm working with Unity and game engines and shooting volumetric capture, and so I think we're kind of on the brink of a very different world of content than we've ever seen before. That'll have a greater kind of engagement and a greater overlap between gaming and traditional cinema. And so the big challenge at the moment that I think the industry is sort of grappling with, besides that reorientation, is the fact that how do you capture live action elements in an environment that you can move around them like you can in a game? And so technically that's a really hard thing to do. So it used to be sort of motion capture where you're capturing a point cloud and then that becomes a creature, but if we want to make that live action and capture a face or a recognizable actor or a recognizable movement, something authentic, or a collaboration between a bunch of people, sort of an ensemble thing, it's complicated. So a lot of the time right now is spent in volumetric capture and making those pipelines better, meaning that we're capturing in an outside-in experience with between 50 and 200 cameras, capturing an element from all sides, and then improving that, shading it, lighting it, and making it look like it's something that can either be put into an existing CG background or like an AR experience where you can kind of see it in where it feels like it could be married into the background and not just feel like a hologram.
And shifting to the sound world, Peter, you've served as the sound designer and supervisor for a ton of big franchises like Paranormal Activity and the Fast and Furious series. So how does your approach evolve as these franchises produce new installments and continue to release new films?
I think we come at it from a craft perspective, where on Tokyo Drift, we were just trying to make sure that we got car sets recorded that were authentic. If there was an RX-7 in the film, we wanted it to be an RX-7. And once you start to build up skills in recording a single car, I think on the next film you'd go in, you'd want to make sure that the supercharger on Dom's car sounded just like a supercharger. And then you start to work on details of tires. And maybe by 5, you're starting to really think about how the characters in the films could be represented by the engines in the cars they're driving. I think early on we would try, if you had an M16 firing in the film, you'd want to go out and record that gun. And now on Fast 9, if it comes to pass, we'll probably try to figure out how to get the right sound for that emotional moment, be it a Mauser or a musket or a cap gun, something that speaks to the perspective, the emotional state of the people who are shooting the guns or being fired at. I think those are the types of levels that we work on a film that is very, very craft-based, like Fast and Furious, where you have a zillion different things going on at once. With something like Paranormal Activity, I think one of our biggest leaps was the concept of the original film that was most interesting from a sound perspective was there was one element. The whole film should look like it was shot on a video camera. It was found footage. So that seems fairly straightforward, kind of a less is more approach. But there was one element in the film. When the demon was around, we audience could hear it, but the people in the film couldn't. And that was really unique, and it really worked. So on the next films, we tried to experiment with playing with that sound. That sound was a very, very low-end kind of bass rumble. And so we started, I think I was 4, I think, and I was very impressed with the head of Paramount at this time, because we tried working with something that was just below the frequency cutoff of most theaters. It was 15.8K. We tried a really, really high tone that just you teenagers out there would probably be able to hear, but old farts like me, I was like, 15K, bring it on, I can't hear that. I haven't heard that in 20 years. And it was really interesting because the executive assistants were like, oh, what is that? It's really weird sound. What is that? And the head of the studio, like me, is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't hear anything. But I thought that was a fun way to play within the film with a sound that actually not only the people in the film can't hear it, but some members of the audience can hear it and some can't. And in a way, it was a little sort of an age gradient. If you're below this age, you can hear it, and if you're above, it's secret, and you can't. So that's what, some ways that we played with that kind of thing.
So, wow, okay, yeah, I guess I'm getting older, so I'm starting to, not hearing things anymore when I go into those movies.
What?
But,
What?
What? Huh? Anyone? All right, moving on. Brian and Jordan, I want to ask you guys specifically, as members of the visual effects and art departments, your teams are often collaborating and deciding, what can be done practically versus what can be done in CGI or in post. So can you just open up and talk a little bit about that collaborative process?
Well, I could start off by saying that, part of what we do in visual effects is take it to a level where you just can't build it necessarily on a set anymore. But what we hope to have is something that's very concrete, very real, that we can then use and match and then use that as a base so that when we're building out the sets, for miles and miles or a whole city, we're starting with, something that you guys took a long time to think about. The thought process was there, you built it, and then we can take that and, take it to the next level. So for me, it's everything you want it to live in some sort of real reality, and then take that reality and then push it as far as the film needs it to go. So for me, that collaboration is so important, because the other end of that is that instead of him having a whole year of figuring out and getting approvals from the director, we start from scratch. And then we have to go get all those approvals. And our time usually is cut down to like 6 months. So so it's great that we start with something, and then as the process goes, sometimes it's embellished upon, and sometimes, I worked with one director, I won't name names, Roland Emmerich, but lovely guy and really love his movies, but there were times where we'd show up to go shoot on a set, and he didn't like the set. And if we didn't have another set to go to, he would basically say, okay, paint this blue. Just like magically, by painting it blue, the set would go away, because what he would do is then start the process and doing it in post, and then come up with a design that he's not forced into. Because sometimes, when you're shooting on set, you have a certain amount of time that you have to build it, to shoot it, and then to move on. And there you have, with digital effects, you can get to a place where if something is not quite where a director wants it, well, guess what? We start from scratch.
And Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, the collaboration is massive for both our departments and everyone. But I mean, we tend to start kind of at the same time when we're beginning a project. So relationships have to become, you have to form relationships quickly, and that's I would say that's like 50%.
Yeah.
So you've got the same vision, but also it's crucial for us when we're designing something, and that's a reality, in telling the story. and we can't quite get to that next level. I mean, it's really nice to have a department that's with you and got the talent that, you know, see the vision from the director, from the designers, whoever you know, the company. And everyone wants to fulfill that task, you know, but very much different, based in reality. But, you know, it's nice to give visual effects something real, so we can give them texture. You know, both departments take their own texture reference and things. There's so much libraries. I mean, 60% of my job is hidden in research and collaboration, and then, you know, the designs that you know, but unfortunately you guys don't see, that we see, that gets put in front of us constantly. It's like a river of things. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know everything, you know, about every department, but it's really nice to collaborate, and then you start understanding, and therefore it helps my designs to sort of say, well, okay, I only need to build to 20 feet.
Right.
And the rest we can top up for expense. It could be for anything, but also it could be in an editing purpose, you know, because once we fix something and it's, you know, we've built with construction, I mean, it's only temporary structures like wood, plaster, depending on the set. There's room to play. And I think that's what we have to remember when we're doing these jobs, however experienced we are, is to play and produce a product for you to keep coming to see. With that in mind, you know, like I said, it's visual effects to me crucial, and also the skills that I know for them, because no one knows each other's job, because it's so intense, and sometimes you're in it, and it's always good to have an outside party from any department to come in. Visual effects for me is like, yeah, great, thanks. You're going to top that up, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's two types of movies nowadays, where you still are building sets, and then the movie where you just put the actors in front of a blue screen or a green screen. And, you know, even though what that leads is, you know, an imagination, what goes behind there, and that can be terribly exciting, and also it can be terribly painful. Yeah. So there's having something to ground and working with our department, and, you know, for that matter, all the different departments on a film. Like, for example, on Black Panther, when I came onto set for the first time and then saw all the beautiful costumes of all the African garb, I was like, I think this is going to be like the costume designer is going to get an Academy Award nomination for this for sure. And you just instantly know, you know, when that stuff happens, because you just go, I've never seen this. This is amazing, and it's really gratifying.
Awesome, thanks guys. And moving on, I want to actually shift back to Russell real quick. And could you speak about founding Bleeding Fingers Music, and just maybe like what your proudest moment of that has been so far?
Oh, wow. Well, for those of you, there's probably most of you that don't know, what we wanted to do with Bleeding Fingers, which is slightly different to just kind of the regular composer that you may come across for film and TV, is composers are historically solitary creatures. You know, the production will go to them and they'll work on a movie or a program. What we felt we should do, partially because of our experience in that arena, we've kind of got a long history in our other companies. My partner and co-founder in Bleeding Fingers is a guy called Hans Zimmer. And he's a visionary, I mean, truly is a visionary and a magnet for talent. And we saw all this incredible young and exciting talent coming through our buildings. And we wanted to kind of find a way to harness them, accelerate them, because a lot of them have done their dues and they're ready to go. And some of the hurdles for them was just access to the projects and access to studios. So we created this space in Santa Monica where they're encouraged to collaborate. So we have 20 rooms in the building, and we surgically picked composers to not only be exceptionally talented, which has to be a given nowadays, but also a different skill set or a different aesthetic, and with a completely studio doors open policy, which may sound crazy, they're not always open, but figuratively, and on all projects, all composers are encouraged to come in and work together. And you know, it's not unusual for you to get to a scene and not have an idea, but it's great to know that there's another guy down the hall that will help you out. And ultimately, they can always go into Hans as well, and that doesn't help. That doesn't hurt either. So proudest moments, gosh, you know, I actually think I'm exceptionally proud of the Emmy nominations and BAFTA nominations. Of course, we all are, but I think when I see a composer at 24 years old working on a landmark blue chip BBC project that historically he wouldn't have got hold of until he was well in his 50s, that's exciting, and I think we're extremely proud of our team.
All right. And Mike, actually, I want to shift back to you. I know, perked up a little bit when I said your name there, but animation fans, especially BoJack fans, are really excited about the release of Tuca and Birdie. I know I am. So could you tell us a little more about that project and just what we can expect from it?
Sure. And first, I just want to make sure to thank our moderator, Connor Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, there we go. That's my stage
Doing
name.
a really great job. Yeah, we have another show coming out from the team behind BoJack called Tuca and Birdie, starring Tiffany Haddish. We just had our first table read, and it was like the most, you know, it's like one of these rare occasions in show business where you're like sitting in this small room with all these amazing actors reading this script, and like you're getting a personal little show, sitting there with Tiffany Haddish days after she, you know, killed it at the Oscars. So yeah, it's Lisa Hanawalt, who's the art director of BoJack Horseman, my partner on the show. We come up with so many visual gags and jokes. And she has created her own show. It's basically kind of like animated Broad City with birds. A couple characters from her comic books. She's a very terrific comic artist. If you haven't checked out her books, you should go out and buy them today. Maybe they're downstairs. And yeah, it's just going to be so much fun to work on. I love animals. I love toucans. Just animating a toucan with that big giant nose, I'm just looking forward to that in and of itself.
Absolutely. And I think all you guys out here, there's probably some of you that want to ask some questions of your own, and we have some time for audience Q&A. So if you want to file a line right here behind the mic, we can just get to as many of you as we can before we run out of time. All right, Bill.
What a gentleman.
Right up here, yeah.
Real quick question. First off, thank you. You are all very inspiring as a filmmaker. Like, you keep me sane. You guys push me to make it look better. You guys make it sound, and you make it want to make it sound better. Thank you. Okay, that's out of the way.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
I'll make it a real simple sounding question. Is the holodeck coming? Is that a thing? Like, Andrew, you might really...
Not for a while.
Not for a while.
But soon.
Actually, it is coming pretty soon. Yeah, and I like what Andrew said earlier. I mean, what we're talking about, augmented reality and mixed reality, and again, having been at Microsoft, and there's some things going on that's 20 years out that no one, by the time something comes out, it's already been worked on for 10 years. So like, there's a lot of cool stuff coming.
Yeah.
And I think that I think Andrew, you really touched on it. Is that there is a convergence for how we're experiencing what we make. And I think you're going to see different modality. It definitely affects sound. Sound's a huge component, especially when you're looking at virtual reality or augmented reality. The reality piece, so much of that reality piece is audio, but also visually. So I think you're going to find new endpoints and new ways to kind of experience your favorite IP or experience the world. And the next 5 years is going to be, you're going to start to see some of those giant, steps and leaps. It's not here today, but it is here today. Dun dun dun. There is stuff happening, and it's cool, and it's going to change the way we consume and we experience.